Hey guys, today's video is going to be a quick one about how to finish your projects. Let's go. So, finishing your projects is really important. You don't want to end up saying that you've done Blender for 2 years, and then when people go, so what did you make? Then you go, and you show them 1 or 2 work in progress photos or 1 or 2 finished renders that you're not even that proud of. I don't know if you guys have been in that situation, but I definitely have. You can look through my folders and you'll just find hours and hours and hours of work on Blender projects that I never finished or I never made a product that I was proud of. So I just want to pass on a couple tips. Let's get started. By the way, this scene is from my most recent rendered chance. You can check it out on my Instagram at EJ3Dart. Tip number 1, change your lighting. So in this scene, my lighting is pretty basic. It's just a sky texture. So I just played with the sun size, the intensity, the elevation, all this. I just played with the settings. And if you're using lights, if you've got a spotlight or an area light, play with those settings. See, change the intensity, change the rotation, change the angle, you know, because lighting can really change how your scene looks. Number 2 is your camera. You really want to make sure that you're happy with how your camera is positioned and all of the settings in the camera. So my camera here is looking upward at the subject of the scene, the dice in the hand. So it shows a bit of like awe. So let's look at my camera settings as well. Instead of using your normal perspective lens, which would look like this, I'm actually using a panoramic lens. This is a tip I learned off Max Hay, and it just creates a more of a cinematic and wide look that lets you get a lot more detail and depth into your scene. So I'm using a fisheye lens polynomial. This is probably like the only one I would recommend using. All the others are a bit too fisheye, but this one you can really control the settings. I'm not entirely sure what all of them do, but I kind of just play with the sliders and see what I think looks good. Another thing you can do with your camera is maybe change the rotation. So you could rotate it on the Y, make sure it's local for your camera, and maybe even like I could change this. I could move the camera down and make it look up even more, you know, things like that. I could also even go like this. It is a look you can go for. Use it when you think it's appropriate. So yeah, you can play with those settings when you're a bit stuck with your projects. Tip number 3 is make sure you have enough detail in your scene. So for example, let me show you this scene before I added more detail. So without those extra bits of detail, you see there's no cables here. You're seeing a bit too much of the texture. It doesn't look very realistic. There's not much small detail in this scene. Like it's really just medium in this buildings and large, right? So that's why I added cables in here to break up this texture. I still thought I needed some more medium detail and maybe even like tiny detail. So what I did is I even tried adding aerials to the buildings in here. None of it looked right. So what I did is I grabbed this sci-fi building here, scaled it down to size, and then I just played a little bit with the geometry. And then I just added these aerials on top, which are just cylinders. And then I just duplicated this thing around a bunch. And you can see what it adds in the scene here. It's just these things up here and here. And the small aerial, you know, it makes it look just more realistic. So yeah, it really added that medium and small detail that this picture needed. Another thing you can do if you're not feeling right about how it's looking is look up some other pictures that are like the one you're trying to create. So for example, for this scene here, it's a sci-fi city thing, and I got some inspiration from Max Hay. So I just went to my browser and I looked up Max Hay city, just went to images and had a look. I mean, that is a way that you really can get unstuck, is to look at your favorite artists and see what they did to make theirs look better, what you like about it. One last thing is, if you don't like how it looks, set it to render and then go for a walk. Go out from your computer, go do something else, hang out with your friends, go get some food, get some water, and just take a break from being creative and being at your computer. Just like let your brain have a reset and then come back with fresh eyes and have a look at it, and then you can probably figure out what you think it needs. So yeah, that's the last tip. That's how to get unstuck in your projects. Make sure you use some of these tips in your projects and your environments, because finishing projects is important. You want to build up a portfolio, because that's what using Blender is about, is making art that you're proud of, making art that you want to show people and use to get yourself work even. So anyways, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at EJ3Dart, and keep going with Blender. You got this.